So I needed a shaper vise, and I've been looking for years to go on the Varnamo. And this came up on a sale, and we're going to do the usual treatment. So if you don't know, anytime you buy an import vise, so something that isn't made by a ultra high quality manufacturer, and to be specific here, by import I mean Asia, you need to get rid of all the grinding dust and everything on the inside, because they never do it, and it's really gross. So let's go through and I'll show you what to do. Yep, for that. Okay. Got those jobbies, and like, look, right there. That's a whole bunch of iron filings with the grease that they packed it in. That's what I'm talking about. You always have to do this. Don't expect this to be excellent right out of the gate. It's just not going to be. So we got the handle. All right. Ta-da! So again, that's a whole bunch of cast iron filings that's caked into the grease. That's what that is. And if we look closer, we can still see leftover stuff pretty much everywhere. So full disassembly. And remember, when I started this whole machining addiction, I was sort of upset that they had to do this every time, because I didn't know about it. So if you're in the same position and you're watching this video, there is an expectation that in order to make these actually work, you got to clean them. These will always be ground together after they're installed. So they may not seat entirely correctly when you're done. I like to put a little witness mark just to make sure everything's correct, but at the same time, like, part of the game. Okay, so the easiest stuff first, we'll start by taking off the base, which is just these two fasteners. We'll put that somewhere. And repeat on the other side, and we'll lift off the actual vise. Okay, more of the same, right? See all the yucky oil in there? So, put that aside, and I don't know, that there that looks like bad casting, that's just cast iron filings. So we'll finish up that side later, but we'll focus on the vise now. But I guess before we put this away, these holes here are where you thread in, or not thread in, but you insert the fasteners, so they just pop out. So right there, and then 4 of them. Right. And because this is an import Asian vise, everything will be in metric. So 4mm on this particular one. Likely if you're on a 6-inch vise, it'll be more than that. We got to take this out because this attaches to the overall push assembly or drive assembly on the inside. And before I move this back, I will clean everything off there too. But anyways, okay, that should be far enough, but might have to break the jaws for that. All right, with a little tap and that loose, we're able to shift this now. Oh, gross. Yeah. And so that's the difference. They cast that pivot point in. Whereas in a Kurt, or on the other high ends, that's an inserted ball that's free to move with grease. So we'll take all that out. And there's that grinding dust. All right, to access the other jaw, you have to go through the base, and that's going to be, I think, a 6mm. And we'll give it a 6mm a go here. I'm pretty sure it's a 6. There we go. Yep, it's a 6. All right, 2 hands here. Easy peasy that way. So if you have the same thing, there we go. All right, with that out, now it's time to get this out and this section out as well. So this, I think you actually have to thread all the way forward. Oh, that's so gritty. Oh. And there you go, all the way forward you have that. And so now this comes out. And that grease in there is going to be packed full of grinding dust, because everything is. So we're going to clean all that out. All right. Last but not least, this. So in my case, because this is a 5-inch vise, this will be a number 3 metric. So 3 mil for the collar. There we go. Yep, look at my finger. All right. So there aren't any bearings in it. That's another major difference here. So this is just a bushed sleeve. Good Lord, look at that. See if you can focus. Look, that's just from in here. Anyways, there aren't actually any thrust bearings, unlike the Kurtz, or the equivalent to Kurtz, right? So that's another reason that you pay the price difference. So what I'm going to do now is go in with some acetone, and on any of the surfaces for which there are any riding, so like the inside lip and the top here, as well as the bushing area and this section there, I'm going to go through and just start wiping it all off. So that there is ground away underneath the casting. So it's lower than the actual end mill that went through it. Not much we can do about that. So there's the gross stuff in there. Got to do the inside of that surface. And with that done, it's pretty easy. Flip over here and do the same process for the larger part of the casting that has a contact surface. And again, we still got to do that. And also don't forget to do these here. Those are full of grinding dust. So there is actually another, probably better way to get that bottom part up, and that's coming through the backside here. You see I missed some, but I did a decent job on the inside rails. So anyways, this is looking better, and that's looking like it needs to be swapped out. All right, for the top parts, well, the top part's pretty much done. So now it's the same process for this. Anything that is going to have a bearing surface on it, get that oil and grinding dust debris off of there. And look at that. That's all iron filings. So just good for a good measure on anything that's on the inside here. Just going to go use a dry cloth this time and pick up anything else before switching back over to the acetone for this. Look at that casting pin pushed in thing. Yummy. And check out this. You know, but that's what you get for a vise that's 1/10 of the cost of a thing, right? Like a proper vise. So expect to put in the work. So rinse and repeat. Same deal here. Now, because I'm not going to be using this right away, I just sprayed it down with some penetrating oil, or just use regular oil that you have kicking around. And then I like to put the base on that for storage. Prevents rust in my ultra rusty climate. All right, it's time to get to work on the lead screw. That's going to be pretty easy. We'll take a brush, go around the Acme, and just clean up all the grease. So again, with this, I'm just going to use both hands here. I'm going to run down the edge of the Acme with the brush, and do the asymptote trick again, and then that'll be it. Can't film this part though. I mean, you know what it's going to look like. It's going to look like that. All right, now by having my nail inserted into the Acme thread and running the full length of the lead screw, I've got that old grease that's full of dust in there, out of there, and now it'll look a lot better. And here we go. So that's ready for the new grease or oil, depending on what I go with. Probably grease for that and the usual whey oil for the ways. Okay, same deal for this part, except for I'll use the brass brush, and we'll do what we can, but I can't run anything through there this time. I could also use the ultrasonic cleaner for this. Seems a bit overkill at this time, but who knows, maybe I'll do that after. All right, so I'm just basically threading that rag through. Nothing too special. Okay, now we have this one effectively cleaned up. And I use the brush to get the little bits of the cloth that come out in the threads there so that doesn't cake in. All right, now, what I have found in the past is that if you go through and you take off the matched jaws that were ground in their position currently, and you try to put them back, they're not great. So although I put witness marks on them, I think what I'm going to do this time is actually not take the actual jaws off. We're going to keep the assemblies as is. I'm going to clean everything else off, and then we're going to put them back. I don't think it's going to be worth it to go in behind here and take off anything, because again, what they do at the factory is they put these on and then they put them under a surface grinder and they grind them flat. So don't think it's worth it. Just going to leave that like that, and this one like that, but we're going to clean up all the dust around it. And even that one looked okay, but look at all the stuff that came off that there. So like it's everywhere. All right, onto the big jaw here. Now again, I'm going to be using this for a shaper. I'm not going to use this on the mill. So if I really, really wanted to really dial this in, I'd have to take a micrometer or dial indicator rather, and I would have to go over every surface. I'd have to use the surface grinder to bring it in true. I'm not going to bother doing that. Most people in this setup don't have access to that, so I'm just going to show you what I do to help make things a little bit easier. So again, we're just going to use acetone and a cloth for this as well. And because this is the movable jaw, I mean, look how much I've got already off. You do need to make sure these cavities are clear. You don't want the iron filings to come in contact with iron again, because like will wear on like. So you really got to give this part here a good thorough cleaning. So we're getting there, but you will need to blow this part out. And I'm going to do that with compressed air for basically everything that we've done, just to make extra sure that we've got the little bits out of there, because we're in it anyway. Now, you're probably going to see me later in this video do this, but that ball there, that needs to be greased. Has to be greased. And it wasn't, and it isn't generally when these come from the factory. Now on the bolt sides of things, I am going to go up and down, particularly the ones that hold the back set of jaws in. These ones aren't that critical, but you know, you're in there anyway, so you might as well do it. But these ones, you want to make sure that there's no caked on dust in there as you put it back through. I'll probably put some blue Loctite on that as well before we do reassembly. Okay, now for the full reassembly. Once we have that piece greased up, and I'm using high moly grease on the inside, you have to start with your lead screw. So I'm going to grease up the Acme thread and get all the little bits of paper off there. And you got to really put some grease on this part too. So that's going to go back in first, then goes that, then goes the jaw. So that goes back in like so. Now we are going to thread this. Now at this point, you can go ahead and add a little bit of grease to the underside of that, but you got to make sure your grease is compatible with whatever whey oil you're using. Normally what I end up doing is I just put the same whey oil underneath. So that's what I'm going to get. So I'm going to put some whey oil on the other side of where that goes underneath the lip. And that should be all right. So this is actually SAE 30. Can't find my whey oil right now, so that's all I'm going to use, just as long as it's in there. Okay, now I run it down the length a little bit. I'm going to continue adding more whey oil, or in this case, like I said, the SAE 30 that I have, as it moves. But it's the bottom jaw time. Now, before this, I had repositioned it, and I had actually already put some oil in here just to make sure the rust wasn't going to happen. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead too. If you're not going to get the amazing accuracy that you're expecting if you have a thin layer of oil here, but then again, you wouldn't have bought this vise if that's what you were trying to do with it. So either way, time to put that lower jaw in. Now, before you tip it upright, if that's how you're going to do it, you're going to want to put the collar back first. Remember, we got to grease this edge is here because that's a bearing surface. So make sure that goes back on, or else this whole pin will slide down as you're lifting it up to put the bottom jaw on. So nice and slow on the return. Then I'll use the Allen key to turn them over really tight. Okay, now it's good that we looked at here because on this angle, I didn't notice this before, but we've got rust in there. So brush that off and get that ready. Okay, so now we have to grease this and this. And I'm going to put a big old gob. Yes. Okay, with that there, I'm going to put some whey oil and again, I'm using SAE 5, or not 5, W30, SAE 30. Then we plunk that in and tighten it up. Okay, so oil all the way down. There we go, and pull that back. Then drive that forward. Okay, once you have that partially tightened, it's time to drive this all the way back in there to make a seal, and then you're going to want to tighten it down. You also will need to adjust the tension on this. If you do it too tight, this binding up on the inside won't let you move. So you have to make it so the vise jaws move freely and that it can also take the compression. So we're a little bit out of line here and there, and that's just part of removing all the grime. So if you can get everything seated in such a way that you can align that a little bit better, because visually it doesn't look very good, practically it's meaningless, then go ahead and do that. Normally I do this, but if you have to adjust those 2 bolts underneath, then you can do that too. Okay, so I've dialed that into where I like it. Everything's moving nice and smoothly. Contact is good, not much movement. Okay, now we're going to use those holes and put the fasteners back up through them. Put grease on that rotating point, and then put the vise back on. I'm also going to grease this. Okay, that feels very good. So that's pretty much it. So if you have one of these, you need to expect to do some work. And once you're done cleaning everything out, expect the sides won't necessarily line up. The tops should. So that's nice there, can't feel that. I can see a little bit here. So there is a little bit of a raise there. So I might go through and readjust the back here, but for a later day. So I'm not going to be indicating off the back of that necessarily anyway, but that's what you need to do. Thanks a lot for watching. Okay, so a bit of an epilogue here. This has actually quite a bit more lateral movement than I thought, and so I was actually able to reposition this to get these better aligned with each other on both sides. And so now what I have to do is, now that I have that position, I have to get the tightness so it has consistent tightness across the whole length of the ground ways. But again, because you're buying something that's, you know, sub $160, this is not fully flat. You can start to see where it binds up even in the oil. But either way, I can make it flat with the surface grinder if I really cared. I don't really care. So you can see how it's bound here. It's like it's not moving freely. And it's sort of like on a way for a lathe that's old. Once you move it up, it starts moving a lot easier. There we go. So I'll fast forward this part and you can see where it aligns now. Okay, and here we go. So we're pretty good. Can't feel anything there. Can feel a little bit up here, so we've got a bit of a rise. And then this is a little bit not great. So I've got a little bit more work to do in really setting it. But that's, you really don't need to. Anyways, thanks again for being here.